Hey guys, this is Hans Hobbies, and this is a review of the Tamiya G6-01 King Yellow 6x6. This is a six-wheel drive monster truck of sorts by Tamiya. It's also available as the Kong head with the semi-truck body and the Dyna head with portal axles and race truck body. This King Yellow also comes in two versions, a pre-painted yellow and a clear version. This is a pre-painted version. Either way, painted yellow I would recommend anyway, because a lot of the stickers are printed in yellow, so your stickers might not match if you paint it any other color. Speaking of stickers, all these rounded stickers up here, and there's supposed to be stickers up here, these stickers, the tail light stickers, they're all on rounded surfaces. They don't like to stay on. They always peel on the edges and dust and dirt gets in them and then they come off. So what you want to do is just replace them with lights or just paint them. That's what I would recommend. Same with this Fender Detail. That also doesn't like to stay on. These edges are already coming off. All the flat edges here, the flat surfaces, they have stickers that go on pretty nicely, so that's not really a problem. It's mostly the rounded areas. Other than that, the body overall looks very good. These upper lights here, front and back, the black parts, they are separate molded ABS plastic that the manual touches the sticky tape on. That sounds dumb, so I shooed mine on. There's a lot of nice detail on here: windshield wipers, school bus, emergency exits. This stop sign here is screwed on to the back so it doesn't move, but it is a molded part. And it's just overall, it's a very good looking body. At the rear, if you're gonna use regular size body mounts, punch tiny holes here and here, so the body mount will fit, and the body clips will fit all the way on. Taking the body off, you can see all the body's also kind of thin, but that can be remedied too. It's not really a problem. The chassis itself looks pretty unique. It's six-wheel drive, but there's no center drive shaft. And as the name implies with G6-01, it's because it's a derivative of the GF-01. You can see here. The wheelbase is identical: servo position, motor position, battery position. They're all the same from here to front, because they basically took a GF-01 and added this rear two wheels. The chassis is unique though. The motor mounts here and transmits the power to all 6 diffs through a multitude of gears, just running through the entire transmission. So the chassis is the transmission. So when you're building it, I recommend you build it with ball bearings as you go instead of trying to take it apart later, because it's a pain in the ass to take this entire thing apart and put ball bearings in later. But fortunately, transmission service doesn't seem like a huge deal with this so far, as long as you're not going crazy with the motor. So that shouldn't be that big of a problem. Other than that, it's six friction shocks on it, spring-loaded bumpers, standard like this type of Tamiya truck fare. At the rear, it has the option for rear steer. You can see here in the little space down here. It's basically a mirrored setup from the front to the rear. So a servo would go here and the identical parts will go in the rear. They include all the parts for rear steer, but what they don't include are the servos, the ESC, the receiver. The only thing they include is the motor and the kit, obviously. These tires on it are lunchbox tires, but the wheels, even though they look like lunchbox wheels, they are not lunchbox wheels. They have 12mm hex on them, so you can fit modern truck tires on it, which is good. With the King Yellow version in particular, this rear body mount is unique to the King Yellow, so don't follow the instructions for the body mount. Follow the instructions that are on the actual King Yellow body set instructions, because this is a different setup than the other two trucks. So I think I covered everything that needs to be said here, so let's go see how it drives. Before we went ahead and drove, this is a very common question with this platform. It's written on the box and advertised as a 1/18th scale truck, but it's definitely not a mini truck. You can see here, it's pretty comparable to the size of a lot of 10 scale trucks. You see a lot of 10 scale monster trucks and stuff here. It's only 18th scale because it's supposed to be a bus for a semi truck. That's the only reason it's 18th scale. As far as RC is concerned, these are 10 scale trucks. So finally driving, you can see again here, like my other review of the GF-01, I'm doing full speed runs on my driveway because these are pretty slow. If you saw my GF-01 review, you would know that that car is not the fastest in the world. And this thing having even more gears makes it even slower than that truck. So speed is something you're gonna be wanting to upgrade very quickly if you've been into the hobby for a while. That's pretty easy to do. Just put a hotter motor in it and that should be the end of that. But The speed is offset by the amount of torque it has. It has a lot of torque. So you can see here, it plows through the grass really well. It doesn't really lose speed transitioning from the concrete to the grass, and that's a great indicator of a truck that has a lot of torque. You can see it just goes basically the same speed, and it still has enough speed for it to like pop over little bumps, send it off a little ramp. It just don't expect this thing to handle like some other like Stampede or whatever other monster truck. Steering radius, as you're seeing here, is also pretty decent for having 6 wheels. People say you need the rear steer for this thing to steer properly, but I disagree with that. Just slow down and you should do pretty well as far as steering. You can see here, I'm running it in my backyard. So if you're going to be running primarily on grass, or like your backyard where your park is mostly just grass, this is a great truck to drive because, again, a lot of torque. It looks really cool, and it has no problem going through this grass. Whereas a lot of other cars like buggies and even some two-wheel drive monster trucks will have some trouble going through here. This thing has no problems. The steering radius here is a lot wider just because I'm pinning it while also steering. If I slowed down, it would tighten right up. The G6-01 is also advertised to be able to climb up to 40-degree hills, and you can see here it's a pretty steep hill I'm climbing, and it has no problem climbing it. It doesn't really slow down very much, and it's just it definitely looks like it was designed for this type of work. Going a little bit slower though, you can see it's struggling a little bit, and that's purely due to the fact that it has open diffs and the diffs are very loose, so it just kind of takes a second for it to grab traction. But because it has 6-wheel drive and 6 wheels to find traction with, it finds traction pretty quickly. And then like if you live in the north like me, I live in Michigan where it's like snow 75% of the year. It's May at the time of this recording, and we're getting a winter storm again, which is ridiculous. But yep, if snow is on your forecast often, then this is also a pretty good truck to have. It does really well in the snow. It doesn't get stuck very often. It likes to plow through the snow. The 6-wheel drive definitely helps. If you're going to be driving trucks like through the window from indoors and your truck gets stuck, this will make a perfect recovery vehicle. Just maybe get some better tires, lock those diffs up, and it'll make a good like tug, a tow truck or push truck. So that's something you could that to get creative with, and that's something I might consider with this truck because it just does so well on the surface. Stability is also very good. Because the truck is very slow and very heavy and so long, it doesn't really have a problem not flipping over. It's very stable. It might change on faster motors, but you know, 6-wheel drive also means 6-wheel braking in RC, and you can see here very, very fast braking, maybe 1.5 feet. Jumping, it jumps pretty decent for the low speed. It lands pretty well. It always lands on its wheels. You can see it doesn't travel very far off the ramp because it's slow, but it will land pretty well every single time. The body will jiggle around a little bit. Off-road on this rough surface, we're back here like my other reviews, and I like to run it here because it's a super rough surface. So if it can handle this, it can handle basically any other off-road surface. And it does really well again. 6-wheel drive is definitely a huge factor in its off-road performance. It doesn't get stuck very often. Even though it does have friction shocks like the GF-01, because it has the lunchbox tires, which are much more compliant, it's not as bouncy. And because it has 6 lunchbox tires, that really adds to the suspension. So even though the suspension travel itself isn't very good and the shocks are pretty garbage, the tires definitely help it be a little stable and negotiate these really rough bumps pretty well. Speed again isn't too slowed down on this surface. It will slow down slightly if you're on a looser surface just because you're going to have a little more wheel spin, but for the most part it does pretty well off-road. Here we are at a construction site, bunch of tractor tracks and super rough surface. As long as you don't get it high centered, it will climb up and over and hop over pretty much anything you ask to go over. The bumper is kind of low, so that is a point that you will catch pretty often, but for the most part, it does pretty well. On a super rough surface like this, one thing you're going to have to keep in mind, as you see here, is it will flip over a little bit more often than other surfaces, just because there's a lot more wheels to catch on edges. So be kind of careful with that, especially if you're going to be upgrading the motor, going a little faster. Keep in mind that you're gonna have to be a little bit more careful on rougher surfaces like this when you're going on around turns, because you definitely don't want it to be flipping over every single time you turn. A lot of people have also tried to make these into trail trucks, and you can see I'm running it on the garden here. And for having open diffs, it's doing pretty well. So if you just lock those diffs up, I figure this would make a pretty great trail truck. It's struggling there a little bit because of the open diffs, but fine traction, and the 6 wheels will eventually find you some traction. That right there, the bumper is pretty low, so it's getting hung up on that brick, but overall it does pretty well as a trail truck. Going slow over hills though is where it kind of struggles a little bit more. You can see even with 6-wheel drive, open diffs will kind of make it struggle a little bit more, especially on this loose surface. You can see there those diffs are spinning out, and it's really just digging into the dirt. So have those diffs locked, or even just put like thick grease in it, and it'll definitely help with the traction if you're trying to drive it for this type of purpose, or just even general off-road purpose. If you have a little thicker grease in the diffs, it will help its off-road performance. So my final thoughts is that this is overall a pretty good truck. Its off-road capabilities are pretty good. Its on-road stability is also very good. It's pretty durable, and it looks unique, and I think overall it's a pretty nice vehicle to have in your collection. It's not a car I would recommend as a first vehicle, but it definitely would make a pretty nice second vehicle, or just third vehicle, or project car, or whatever. If you're interested in this car, there's also a lot of options you can do. It shares a lot of parts with a lot of different cars, so part support is pretty good. And it's a unique car to have in your collection, and definitely not a bad choice. So if you're interested in one of these, I recommend you go out and get one. The price is pretty good, and even for projects, this is a pretty decent price for this type of platform, 6-wheel drive platform. So if you found this review helpful or enjoyable, please subscribe, comment down below, like all that good YouTube shenanigans. You can also follow me on Instagram at Han Hobbies, and I'll see you guys next time.